Hello and welcome to the second episode of our How to Adult series. So today I'm joined by Amelia, who is an alumnus of the University of Leicester. She's recently graduated in the last year. And as always, I'm Bethan from the Support and Development Department. So today we're going to be talking about doing a master's after graduating. And we're going to be discussing our two experiences and hopefully raising some frequently asked questions that often come up when students are considering the master's route. To start with, Amelia, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what your current situation is?
Yes, so I'm Amelia. As Bethan said, I graduated class of 2020 with a BA in archaeology with ancient history, and I've changed institutions to do a master's in international heritage management at Birmingham, where I currently live at home and I'm commuting there. I lived in Leicester for my 3 years, so that's what I'm currently doing.
Brilliant. And I also did a master's after I graduated, so I decided to stay at Leicester, and I'd originally done a BA in American Studies for my undergrad, and then I decided to change my subject for my master's, and I moved over to the business school to do an MSc in marketing. So we both have different experiences, so hopefully you'll be able to get a good breadth of experience when discussing this. Starting with you, Amelia, obviously it's 2020, things are a bit different than usual when it comes to any form of degree. How are you finding it so far?
It's overall weird, I would say. I'm lucky in that I still have campus events. Overall, I'm finding it very weird. There's a lot of online stuff. I'm lucky in that I still have a chance to go to campus at the time of recording this, but it's a lot of self-motivation and just new learning styles that even though I've done the undergrad, I didn't have to do it under these circumstances, so adjusting has been difficult.
Yeah. So are you currently having all online classes?
My current setup is that my seminars take place in person on campus in reduced groups, socially distanced, etc., and then my lectures are pre-recorded online, so I can watch them whenever I want to, with the expectation that I obviously watch the lectures and do the readings before I turn up on campus for my seminars.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a blended learning approach then.
Yes, very much so. I have one Zoom online as well, but that's a research seminar, so it's not directly linked to my course. It's an added extra.
Mm-hmm. So have you found that the support is any better with having to obviously try and do this for a pandemic?
I found Birmingham very good in terms of the support with emailing and being able to still talk to people, and they've been very good at making sure we have our resources sent out to us where we can find support, all of that kind of thing, which has been really useful after a bit of a tumultuous start to the year.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I don't know how I would have found online. I think I would have been okay because mine wasn't many seminars at all. We had about a seminar once a month, and that was more of a workshop because obviously you do a Master of Arts. I did a Master of Science, so I guess it was slightly different. But because we were a social science, obviously we didn't have any labs or anything like that.
Yeah.
But mine was mainly lecture. I don't think it would have really affected my masters too much. When you were thinking about starting a master's, what were the initial steps that you took?
So I'd always gone backwards and forwards over a master's, basically since first year of undergrad. I started looking into them by using a website called Find a Masters and just typing in random keywords of bits of the subject that I was interested in. And then from there, finding some institutions. I was limited in the fact that I wanted to be able to commute from home. I mean, I do have, where I live, I have quite a few universities around me that are commutable, so that's okay. And then from there, I still went backwards and forwards literally until mid-September over whether I wanted to actually do the masters or try to find full-time work. But in the end, under the current circumstances and the situation in my sector, I decided I'd do a masters, commit to that year of education, and then go back to job hunting next year.
Yeah, I feel that's quite similar to a lot of people who decide to do a master's straight after their undergrad. I feel that was quite similar to me. I'd started doing some form of job search, but I was a bit naive in that I didn't start it back in September when all the grad jobs were going. So by the time I started, it was like March. And I don't know, I guess I kind of got into this expectation that I needed to have something coming out of undergrad. You know, like I was happy to have a summer doing not much, but I didn't want it to come to September and I wasn't doing anything. So for me, it was a better option to, I kind of called it more job training than anything, because obviously I changed my discipline from a humanities to a business discipline. And I guess I kind of hoped that it would aid me in future job applications, which it has done, in all fairness. Like there are definitely jobs that I've gone for now that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to if I'd just had an undergrad. But I remember, were you quite set on what type of masters you want to do? Because I went back and forth quite a lot.
I knew that I wanted to do taught over research. That was fairly, didn't really even consider research at all. And then other than that, I knew I had, from my undergrad, I had narrowed down what I was interested in, and it happened to be in the same field of study, which made it easier because I knew a little bit more about what I was getting into. But other than that, it was honestly just a case of throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck, reading course descriptions and looking at university websites just to see what caught my eye. And I happened to find the course that I'm on now and really connect with it. So I was quite lucky in that way, I think.
Yeah, no, that is really good that you're getting on with it. Trying to think, like, so you were saying that you wanted to find universities around where you live. I had a similar scenario, but I wanted to find universities around Leicester. So I was really set on living in Leicester because I decided it was cheap. I knew people there still, and it was just easier. Like I'm someone who gets a bit nervous about moving to new places, so I thought that's easier. I know Leicester, so I was happy to commute. You know, and we are in the Midlands, so there are various options. So I did have a look at Birmingham City. I had a look at Loughborough, and I very nearly went to Loughborough. Like I went along to the open evening. I applied for a digital media MA course, and I was all ready to do it. And then I just kind of started adding up all the different finances. And what really surprised me that I hadn't really thought about before was that different master's courses can cost different amounts, because obviously undergrad, they're all the same.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, you can apply for a master's grant from Student Finance, but you get a set amount, and that covers your everything. They don't give you a course fees grant on top of that. It's for you to pay for your course, your maintenance, anything else that you'd need to pay on top of that. So because I'd never had that issue in undergrad, I hadn't put too much thought into it. And then I'd seen courses at Birmingham City that I thought, oh, these are great. This is exactly what I want to do. And they were like 12 grand, and the grant is only just over 10. And I had no money saved. So that was just a non-starter. And then by the time I'd started adding up all the Loughborough costs and me commuting, because I don't want to live in Loughborough, I just got priced out.
That's basically what happened to me, and why I decided that I wanted to live at home to cut out some of those costs, because my, other than obviously tuition fees, my main cost now is commuting, because living at home is obviously a very financial, for me at least, it's a financially safe decision that has allowed me to be able to focus on my masters a little bit more and worry less about money.
Yeah.
It's a £9,000 course, so I do have money left over. I'm by no means being left with nothing, but being priced out of masters, I think, is a very big issue, especially if you need to afford accommodation on top.
Yeah, definitely. For some people, they would have to save a fair amount before even considering it. And then obviously you're reduced to, what courses are even available at most universities, because like Leicester, we're a very traditional university in terms of our courses. So there wasn't many to choose from when I came back to Leicester. So hopefully that is something that the government takes into account later on, because especially in a climate like now, a lot of students are probably thinking, well, a master's feels my only choice with the current job market.
Yeah. I felt a little bit like that. It felt futile to look for jobs at the moment. So luckily I'd had a master's place lined up.
Would you feel like that was one of your main drivers? So if I were to ask you why you chose to do a master's?
Well, the job market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I definitely, there were jobs out there were, and I was applying to them before lockdown, and I was getting some interviews, and then lockdown happened, and any job I had in the works was, it either doesn't exist anymore or the place is still shut. And then after things reopened, the job market is just completely different. I applied to jobs that I thought I was well qualified for, asked for feedback, and they said, it's not you, we've just got so many applications that I felt without that added thing, I may find it really difficult to find something that was hitting all my criteria. So my master's was really fueled by my desire to increase my employability above, say, my desire to stay in education.
Yeah, I understand that. So thinking about the application process, how did you find that? Like, what were the steps you had to take?
So with a master's, at least the ones I applied directly to the university rather than using UCAS like you do for undergrad. And so it was a fairly similar process as undergrad, which I'm sure listeners probably have already done, in that I wrote a personal statement, I filled out all the information. I found writing the personal statement challenging because
I definitely found it challenging as well. Like I realised I hadn't written one in like 5 years, and I genuinely had forgotten because I'm just so used to writing cover letters. Like how you even format a personal statement.
Yeah, that's what I was like. And I actually went to the Leicester University Careers Service because they do a I forgot what they're called now, a letter writing session.
Oh, like a workshop, yeah.
Yeah, like a workshop, because I'd written mine like my undergrad, where you keep it fairly nondescript and a bit more general, because obviously you may be sending it to different institutions, different courses, whereas with a master's one, you really have to get into the nitty-gritty of why you want to do that specific course and why you want to do it at that institution, which I found it a difference that I had to get to grips with. And then after that, it was just a waiting game of waiting for my offer to come through.
Did it take long? Mine literally came back the next day. Like I don't think my course were too snowed under with applications.
Mine took, I think I submitted my application, because I had to submit my application, and then an email went out to my referees waiting, and then I had to wait for my referees to submit their references. So I think I submitted it mid-December. My referees came back by like the 22nd of December, and then I don't think I got an offer until maybe mid to late January, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, the
Okay.
Christmas period probably played into that, but I got various emails that looked like the offer email, but they weren't, and so I got myself worked up. But it was a little bit of a waiting game. It definitely wasn't next day.
Yeah, literally the same happened to Matt, my partner, as well, because we did the same course, and a few of our other friends. I think the business school were maybe like, oh my goodness, someone's applied, because there weren't too many people in our year. So yeah, so that worked out fine. But yeah, no, I was the same. I didn't realise you weren't meant to apply for UCAS, so I actually have a new account for UCAS that I accidentally made because I just assumed that it all went the same way. So yeah, so any students who are thinking of applying, look directly through different universities' websites for different courses and applications.
Yeah.
So something that we do in these podcasts is expectations versus reality. So all of these theories are about how to adult, and a lot of the time people have these worries about adulting, or they have these big expectations on how it will be, and then maybe that expectation doesn't deliver. So what would be your expectation versus reality for doing a master's?
So my expectation is that masters, it's the next level. Everyone's going to be so smart and so much smarter than me, and will I fit in, and do I have the academic ability to do a master's? And I really expected to have this like hierarchy of like smartness within it, if you know what I mean. Whereas in reality, everyone is there in the same boat, and it's so much more similar to undergrad than I expected it to be. It's lectures, it's seminars, you do your readings, you write your essays, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I really didn't. I was like, where's the extra thing? But it's the same. It's just to a higher standard. So I think if people are worried about, how they're going to manage that higher academic environment or anything like that, I'd really say if you've done your undergrad and you've got a grade out of it that would allow you to apply to master's courses, then you won't have an issue and you'll be able to fit in just fine.
Yeah, definitely. I guess my expectation versus reality is fairly similar. So as I said previously, I changed from an undergrad in the arts to a master's in science. So I kind of had this worry that I was going to come in and everyone would have done some form of business undergrad before I got there. And I was going to be really behind, and I was going to have to spend the first month basically becoming a bachelor expert within marketing. I thought everyone would have come from that before, because my experience over in the arts is that for the most part, people would, if they're doing a master's in history, they probably did an undergraduate in history sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of assumed it was the same, really, because it wasn't a conversion course. It was just a regular master's. But then I came, and everyone I knew, who I hung around with, at least in my friendship group, apart from one person who did do marketing. So my partner Matt, he did film studies, so he was very much in the same boat as me with American studies. My friend Sophie did geography and Spanish. My other friend Emily did sociology. So basically, we came from a big collective, big collection of different undergraduates, and I really didn't have to worry because everyone was in the same boat. No one was coming in with much more knowledge than how to do a SWOT. Which most people, you don't have to have a degree in business to know how to identify strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, it really wasn't too bad at all. I'd say the only main difference for anyone who's considering doing that and going down a business route after doing humanities was the dissertation. I wouldn't say it's harder. It was just different, because I was so used to, I was expecting to rock up and have to read about 300 books, because for my undergrad I read over 100. So I thought, well, masters, it's going to be crazy. I need to start now. And,
Yeah.
and I remember going to my professors going, okay, so, when do I submit this dissertation proposal? Surely I'm going to be working on this all year, because in your undergrad, you do work on it the whole of your last year of doing your undergrad. So I thought it would be the same thing. And they were like, oh, it's nice to know you're keen. You don't need to start right now. You haven't even got through a month of lectures. I don't know how you'd start right now because you don't know how to do marketing, which they made a good point.
Yeah, I was
It was
surprised by that
different.
as well.
Mm.
Because it was dropped into conversation. Yeah, we'll start talking about your dissertations in February. And I was like, what? February?
Yeah.
Not now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like if you have spare time, start thinking about it. What I did, I built off my undergraduate dissertation, so there was less pressure. I tried to stick within at least the same subject area. Obviously, I was coming from a different angle, but it did make it easier because there was less background research. But in terms of additional reading, like obviously, I was just so used to doing subjects like literature and history that I thought I was going to be having to almost get primary sources and like read all these different books and previous essays and articles, etc. And they were like, no, your main focus area is your own field research. And obviously that was a completely new thing that I'd never done before. So that's the main difference, I'd say, for anyone thinking of changing disciplines, is if you haven't done a science before, you'll have to do field research over desk research.
I would say as well, though, for me in a Master of Arts, there's management in the title, so it is a little bit, but we're also encouraged to do field research.
Oh, okay.
Just to make up even our the setup at Birmingham is that for each module you do one 4,000 word report or essay at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a bit of an expectation to develop some of your own research. Like I would say, in my experience so far, they're pushing you towards that, developing your own research sort of objectives a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Well, there we go. That's why we've got both of us on here, because I would have not known that. So yeah, we were both talking beforehand about one of our expectations versus reality for both of us was making friends. So did you think during your undergrad that if you were to do a master's, you'd meet less people?
Yeah, I definitely did. Just from the expectation of an additional workload. I thought I'd be just spending all day, every day in the library. And then normally masters are much smaller on scale. And obviously I've had a very different experience than what I was even expecting when I applied, because of COVID and all the different things. But so far I haven't done the normal freshers stuff, which is where I found a lot of my friends in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, I've found that just talking to people in the seminars, I'm on my way to making some good friends. So I really don't think it's a worry that I needn't have had, kind of thing.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. I didn't think I'd meet anyone new. I thought it would be everyone who I already knew in Leicester from the younger year groups, from when I've been in sports teams and things. I thought maybe a few people who'd maybe done a master's as well from my year group. But I thought for the most part, like you said, I'd be spending all my time studying. I wouldn't meet anyone new. And then I started a new job. So obviously I met you and I met loads of other people through that.
Yeah.
And then my course as well, like I said, there were people coming in from different universities. There were people who I hadn't met previously, and I got a whole new friendship group through that. Obviously, a lot of masters, I know it's a bit different this year, but for the most part, a lot of masters have a lot of international students. So I also had quite a few friends who had come from China who I never would have had the chance to meet before. It's not too bad for those of you worrying that you're not going to meet anyone.
It's definitely not a worry that should impact your decision, I would say.
Yeah. So we can talk about our tips now. We're going to have a section on tips for doing a master's. So we've already touched on the application process a bit, but Amelia, what would be your top tip for someone who's about to start it?
I would say if you've even got an inkling that you might want to do a master's, just have a bit of a general look, because each university is in control of their own application process. Each one will be different. The deadlines will be different. So make sure that if you might want to do one, you know that you're not going to not have that chance simply because you've missed the deadline.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've written down here that my tip is for coping academically. So I guess my best tip with this would be try and be organised. I feel we're all quite guilty in our undergrad of leaving things to last minute. You know, I definitely had one or two all-nighters. Um, and it's quite difficult to do that within a master's, because even though we're saying, yes, it's not a bad transition from your undergrad, it is still a fair hike up in terms of the quality that's expected. So even as simple as when you are reading through a book or reading through an article, you know, make sure you do note down the source. You do make notes from it straight away, because you don't have a lot of time. A lot of masters are done within a year. So you don't really have time to be like messing around and going back and trying to find sources or doing more reading than you need to. So yeah, I guess staying organized, but also knowing how to prioritize your workload as well. Because I'm not going to be someone who says you don't have to do all the recommended reading, but reading between the lines, you don't really have to. And if it does seem a massive workload, then think about what would be the most beneficial to you from that reading list, and think about which essays you'd like to do before they've even been started, because a lot of the time they will give you an outline of what's expected from the course. And if you do have the opportunity to think about what essay title you want to pick, there's nothing wrong with starting early, because yeah, you only have 2 terms to get all the taught part done. I feel like I'm telling these tips to you, Amelia, like in a patronising way, like at the beginning of your masters.
No, staying organised is something everyone can benefit from. Undergrad, masters, work, organisation is key.
Definitely. So something we can both talk about, because we've both been affected by this and have different experience of it. So finances and living arrangements. So you've mentioned that you commute from home, and that was one of the reasons why you chose Birmingham. How do you manage your finance situation with doing a master's?
So I got my loan, the full amount that I could get from the government, and most of that is going towards my tuition fees. I commute in, which is at the moment is my biggest outgoing expense. It's about 40 minutes on the train. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not short, but it's not the longest it could be either. It's fairly manageable with the reduced visits to campus, which has been
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of blessing in that way. And then at the moment, and as I did through all my undergrad, I do have a part-time job as well, just to bolster my income a little bit. But I'm very lucky in that, because I'm living at home and because I'm in full-time education, my parents have given me very, very reduced rent costs. And I pay my way in other ways, which has been really useful, because I just felt that if I had moved out, if I'd say stayed in Leicester, um, I just wouldn't have been able to commit the time that I wanted to a master's whilst working the amount that I would have had to make up the difference in costs that I would have had to need to, to survive.
Yeah, understandable. How have you find living at home, obviously, because you lived out during your undergrad?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I'm lucky in that I do have a very good home life. I get on with my family. I don't have young siblings who are kind of running around and wanting to take my attention. But obviously, there's always going to be those clashes. Everyone and as well, obviously, my mum's trying to work from home at the moment, and my brother's in a bit of an in-between state. So it's just a lot of people in the house for a lot of time. But so far, it's been all right.
That's good. So I have a different experience from Amelia. As I said, I stayed in Leicester. And for me, one of the reasons why I chose University of Leicester is because you do get a discount as an alumnus. So I can't remember the exact percentage it is now, but I think instead of paying 9,000 and something, I paid 6,000 and something. So that meant that I kind of was able to hold back a bit of a mini maintenance loan for myself from the one from student finance. I love how you said I chose to take all of the student finance. It baffles me that people don't always take the full amount.
I know, especially because of the way the payback's set up. It's a really good deal, actually.
Yeah, definitely. So anyone listening, definitely take the full amount if you choose to go down this route. I strongly recommend it because it's a similar payback process as you have for your undergrad. So you're not going to be expected to pay it all back at once. But yeah, in terms of where I lived, I didn't know too many people when it came to doing my master's. A lot of people had graduated. So I ended up going into a shared house with people I didn't know. But I chose to do those spareroom.com rentals. So I was only responsible for my room. I wasn't responsible for the rest of the house, which was really convenient because obviously when you're living with strangers, the last thing you want to do is to negotiate how many lights are turned on, who uses the hot shower every day and things like that. Every day, we all do it every day, multiple times a day. But yeah, basically, I didn't want to negotiate bills with people. So the bills were included. I was only responsible for my room, so I didn't have to worry about messy kitchens and things like that. And it was an easy, convenient choice for me. But I also had to work. So there are costs that are involved with doing a master's because, as we said, you're paying for your tuition and you're paying for everything else. So I did get a job, and Amelia knows I did have multiple jobs. But this isn't necessarily the situation you need to be in when doing a master's. I feel like I'm a special case. I hadn't saved at all. I'd made a very last minute decision to do a master's. So I decided to be a bit cheeky because you're not meant to work over 15 hours. And I don't recommend it to those who are listening. But I did have 3 jobs, didn't I?
Yeah, you worked a lot. I still don't know how you did it to this day.
I was a bit of a mess. So when my academic tip is to stay organised, I don't really think I had a choice because I was always moving. But for the regular person, having one job should be absolutely fine, especially if you've had some savings. You're not entering the masters with debt, and you've just been a bit smarter than me, really. But yeah, I'd say, has finances been a massive worry for you when doing a master's?
I would say no. It was definitely a consideration, but in the end, it didn't ultimately turn me away from it. Obviously, I think it is much like your undergrad. Finances are always going to have to play a part because university is an expensive endeavour, kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel my best recommendation to anyone who's worried about it is to just add up how much your predicted costs are going to be and just kind of treat it from a practical side.
Yeah.
And if you are worried as well, there are teams that can help talk that sort of thing through with you. We have a budgeting department within the welfare department in Charles Wilson. They'll be able to talk through any finance worries that you have coming up. I think that's everything, really. I think hopefully we've covered it all. But if people do have any questions, they can get in touch with us at sutraining@le.ac.uk. Definitely go back and have a look at our How to Adult toolkit on the website. That's just leicesterunion.com/howtoadult. And thank you so much for joining me today, Amelia.
That's no problem. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And hopefully people learn a bit more about what it means to do a master's. Bye.
Bye.